welcome to another episode of Evident Design. I'm out here right now in Furulund in Sweden. It's a nice Saturday. I'm out making a fire, boiling some chaga tea, and I thought I'd make a little video about painting snow, because we have a lot of that in Sweden. Who knew, huh? So I haven't been uploading videos as frequently as I'd like to. I've been pretty busy creating my upcoming online course in digital painting and various freelance work. You know, one of which was to paint a matte painting backdrop for an Indian wedding in South Africa, and I'm heading down there in a few weeks. Life as a freelance creative can be quite interesting sometimes. So anyway, in this episode we're going to be talking about how to paint snow. Stay tuned. Now, before we get back out of this forest and actually start painting, it would be good to talk a bit about what snow is and how it appears in nature. So snow, just like water, is often colorless, and if you need a refresher on painting water, you can check out my tutorial on that. So snow takes on the color of the environment. If you have mostly an overcast day like today, the snow will appear white or whitish gray. The shadows will be similar hue to the brighter areas of the snow, which can be quite monochromatic. If you instead have a sunny day with big bright blue sky and a shining sun, the snow will take on different colors. To explain this further, let's imagine we have a mound of snow just like this, and the sun is from here. So this side will be hit by the bright sun rays with the color of the sun, making this area more whitish yellow or even reddish if the sun is further down on the horizon. Now this other side, which isn't hit by the sun rays, this side will be illuminated by the sky, which is blue. So this side will be mostly blue in color. So in essence, this mound of snow would have two different color hues. One with a whitish yellow color and one with a snowy blue. Now today is a somewhat sunny day. There's some patches of blue sky, and that makes the shadows a little bit blue, but mostly dulled down gray. We'll look at proper reference pictures when we get back home. Then I can show you how the shadows actually look more blue when it's a really blue, bright day and the sun is shining on the snow as well. Now, another thing to keep in mind about painting snow is that it often has two main different textures. And one of the textures is the sweeping, soft, smooth surface of the snow. This is when the wind blows and makes the surface smooth. And also when it snowed the other day and the snowflakes just lay down softly. The other texture is the more crunchy one, and that's when the snow has sort of packed together. So when you're actually painting snow, it's important to incorporate both of these textures where it makes most sense to achieve a realistic and believable result. Now it's lovely out here, but my fire has burned out and it's getting pretty cold, so let's head back home and fire up Photoshop and start painting.
Alright, so now that we're inside of Photoshop, we can take a look at a few quick references to get us all in the mood for snowy stuff. Start with the first one here, and this is the frozen lake that I sat at today. And if we just go in closer here, we can see that there's a few of the different textures that I was talking about before. So we have the sort of, you know, like thick but flowy and soft texture here. And then we have the more crunchy texture here, with which is more packed up, and maybe even some rain sometime, or some of the snow have melted. And then it just creates these small holes here and there, and that makes the snow more crunchy. So all over you see here this different type of texture, where we have this soft and then also this more crunchy texture. So let's take a look at a different one here. Here we can see pretty clearly also with the colors. You can see that the areas here, the lighter areas, are a bit more warmer in tone, while the shadows are a bit more, are a bit colder, or actually a lot colder. So they're very blue because they're reflecting the more blue sky. And also it's very, very soft here. You can see it's it's almost only soft with a little bit of crunchiness. But we can also see something interesting here, and that's the texture on the softness of the snow. And we're gonna try to emulate that later with how we're gonna paint this actually. This is also the frozen lake. And also here we can see that the lake is mostly, or the snow on the lake is mostly lit by the sun, and that makes it more warmer in tone, almost complete white, I believe. If we just sample this, yeah, it's pretty much all white. But if you have white against blue, the white will appear actually warmer in tone, because that's just how the color relation works there. And then you can see here the shadows, they're very blue here. You can see this this range around there, because that's where what the sky is, or mostly blue. And here's another picture I have not taken. We can see it's very soft here. Some striations with the flow of the snow, which is also very important when we're gonna actually start painting. Like, we have to think about how the snow actually is flowing. And then how this sort of transitions, and we can really see that there's a downhill here. And this is just some snowy mountains. Again, some texture here with very soft, and the snow has flowed down here, and then here we have more crunchiness, more packed snow. And then also the rock is showing through in a lot of places where the snow couldn't stick. And then finally here we have some more of this this rocky snowy texture, where we see the rock protruding through the snow. And we're gonna try to paint that today, some of this stuff. Now let's get into painting. I'm gonna start with painting a quick base, a base layer with some rock, and then I'm gonna show you a few of the other techniques that I use when painting snow. Because once you know how to paint snow on one surface, it will come naturally in a lot of other situations. So let's just start painting a little bit here, make it a little bit darker. Maybe quite dark actually. And I just bring up color balance, that's Command B or Control B, and then make it a little bit blue to get a good background there. So we make a new layer. We call this one Base Rock. And I'm just gonna choose a hard chalk here, so it doesn't really matter how hard I press, it'll always be 100% opaque. So I can paint, and yeah. And then we're gonna do a really dark brown color here. A bit desaturated. And just figure out some cool structure for a rock with some snow on it. It's maybe something like this. I can choose the eraser and choose the same brush there, just to erase some of this, make it look cooler. Now I'm just imagining that there's snow on top of this now. Just fix it up a little bit. Press V to get the move tool, you can move it around. Press B again, and let's just use a little bit brighter tone here. Maybe lock pixels there, so if I paint outside, nothing will happen. Just to make it a little bit rocky here. Change to some soft. I don't really care too much about this sub layer here. I can just use, let's see, just some rock texture right there. Control or Command L, make it a bit darker, so I have some more values to play with. Now I'm thinking the snow will come down like this. Alright, so this is not a rock painting tutorial. If you want to learn more about painting rocks, there's a tutorial on that on my channel. So now let's paint some snow. You can paint a new layer, or make a new layer up here above it, call it snow, and then we press Alt and we clip it to the one down here. we can choose hard chalk again. And this is just one way of doing it. I mean, there's so many ways of painting things. You could just start painting right over it if you want, but this is a pretty cool technique that I think you should try at least. Maybe make it almost white, a little bit blue, something like that. And there's paint over here. Just fill it all the way up. Now I can just make a little bit more variation in the snow. Make it a bit darker and bluer, perhaps. And just to give it some more volume. Now I want it to flow down here, right? So, all right, that's good for now. And here's the cool part. We can actually add a layer mask here. So this little icon here, we add that. And now I can start removing some of this snow. I'm gonna start with using the hard chalk brush. And if I paint black, it's gonna remove. And if I paint white, it's gonna add. So we can just start removing a bit. I'm noticing that this base rock is a little bit too dark. Let's brighten it up a bit. Like that, and then go back to here. And just imagine how the snow is falling. You can color sample as well from there. And this is the cool thing, because I can paint completely black here. It'll remove, and then if I take it back, it's still the same sort of shading and everything. Like I'm not actually removing anything. I'm just playing with this mask here, which is a really cool technique, I think. Maybe make it go down a bit. Now I'm using the hard chalk just to get a good start here. Later I'm going to make it a lot more realistic. And just to figure out some nice way of making the snow sit on this little thing. Maybe even flow down here. All right, so now that we have some start here, here comes the cool part. Now I can actually make a new brush, or I've already made one for this tutorial, but let's make a new one. And I'm going to choose hard chalk. I'm going to go into brush settings, and I'm going to use transfer on this one, and also dual brush. And here we can choose some other texture that's more like, I don't know, any texture really works, but we want some really textural differences here to make it look like snow. So let's pick, I actually have some snow mountain textures already, like this one. Then we can play with the spacing and the size. Whoops. Let's see if I just make a new layer here to play with this. See how that looks. Oh yeah, we want it also on hard mix mode. I think that could work. Let's try a little bit smaller here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Now we want to take away and paint using this brush here. So let's see how that looks. Just start taking away some stuff. Now I just want to make it look sort of realistic. Now remember to change it up, like not only use a lot of texture, but also big areas. So like a big black area here. Like that. Maybe use more of this rocky texture here. Now I'm just switching back and forth between the white and the black, because you can see it's just that depends where what's gonna show through beneath it. So I think this little area here is a little bit weird. So I'm just gonna go down to base rock and just remove a little bit of that. Maybe this area here could have a bit more rock. Like that. Now you see how it starts to look like actual, like if we just zoom out a little bit, it looks quite good so far. What we can do now is a pretty cool technique, and that is to use bevel and emboss. So we just go down to FX, press bevel and emboss, and that's the layer style. So a new layer style appeared on this whole layer here, and I already have set up this these settings. But basically, I just have, if we just check the preview here and we look at the screen, you can see what that's doing. It adds this sort of three-dimensionality to it, just to get started with a bit more 3D. And these are the settings. I'm just using the emboss style, smooth there, not too much depth, and up direction, quite small size, soften it a bit, and the angle is straight from above. Gloss contour is just linear here, and then I'm using linear dodge add with blue here, and then blue on multiply, and not too much either here, because that's, you see, that's too intense and it just looks too digital. So I'm just doing something like that, and the same with the multiply. Something like that is pretty cool. Now I can just press OK. And if I paint in the mask, you can see that it creates this really three-dimensionality to it. But now we're kind of done with this whole area here with the mask. I mean, we could do something like this as well, where we go into the snow mountains here, like this one, and we paint like that. That'll add some more texture to it. Can do that, and then I'll also go back to, let's go back to, so I already made that snow texture brush here. You can save it down. You just go up here and new brush preset. Oh, it's really big. And now if I paint, it's gonna be like that again. So I actually want to paint back some of this that I just lost here from that. All right, so now I can continue, and can just jump back and forth between these two. But if we continue on the actual layer here where it's painted, we can start painting over here. So even if we start like painting, you know, around it, it won't matter, because we still have that that layer there with the mask. So now I'm just gonna figure out how it flows. I'm just using a regular soft round, comes with Photoshop. I'm thinking it flows down here, like that. I don't want to make it too bright. And then I'm just increasing and decreasing the brush size to smoothen it out a bit. Because remember those striations that we saw? Like here. We can see the striations right there, and they're sort of soft, but they're kind of defined as well. So we want to sort of emulate that. Just using the soft brush. Can even make it really, really detailed. Because this is just the part where you're actually just starting to render it out, make it look realistic. And think about how it actually is lying on the rock itself. Like right here, we can see that this should be brighter because it's actually pointing up, and it's three-dimensional. But right under it should be a little bit less bright, because it's thicker, like it goes up here. Maybe it goes down there, like that. And this is all about experimentation, going back and forth between these two. Maybe make this a bit darker here. Maybe here could be a little bit more of that crunchy texture that I was talking about. Just some random shadows here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna couple these shadows with brightness. So I'm gonna pick a really bright area here, and I'm just gonna paint, maybe even go down a bit. Just make it look three-dimensional. Because this sort of thing where you have like dark and then bright on top makes it really look three-dimensional. And this is already starting to look pretty good. Because we don't just want this really soft stuff. We also want this edgy, crunchy stuff. The important thing is to mix it up. Use a soft brush. No need to use any other brush here. Can continue using, going down here. I think it's too bright up there, so I can just use some of this darkness here. I really want it to look three-dimensional, so like you remember on this reference right here, you can see this is where I'm taking my inspiration from. It's darker under there and around it, so it looks kind of puffy, and then brighter on top. So I want to sort of emulate that right here. Maybe even darker under these ones as well. And then it's just about painting. It's really all about just trying it out and seeing what you can do and getting better at it. This doesn't come just overnight. You get better the more you practice. So we're starting to get somewhere. Now, you don't have to paint on just these layers as well. We can also add a new layer up here to just add some more snow, because now if I paint, it's gonna be all over, right? So I can start painting on top of this now, if I want to really blend it in. Like make some of those edges look a bit more natural. Maybe add some more right here. So just playing with a soft brush and always mixing up those two textures that I was talking about. Now I can save this down together with this, and it'll just make everything into one layer. Or not. Wait. Yeah, so what I did there was basically it was like this, and then I just applied the layer style, so everything is on this layer now. And it's still, if I declip it, so press Alt and declip it, you see all the stuff that I painted outside. But I want to clip it to the actual base rock here, and then this one here I want to merge with this. I have to declip it first, select both of them, and then Command E, and then clip it again to the base rock. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Now I can just continue painting here. If I want to, I can make this right there, so if I paint outside, nothing happens. But now it's just one layer. I'm just gonna quickly finish up this right here. So one thing we can do here now is to make a new layer, and then if you remember this other texture that we saw, this layer here, this reference, I mean, saw these like striations right here. It's not perfect, like, you know, really, like it's not really like this, right? There's actually some texture to it. We can achieve that. Let's add some of this extra texture here. particles, pores. Maybe that works. Yeah, this is perfect. So this is actually used for skin, but let's take some dark values here, and then we can clip that too as well to this layer, and just paint a little bit over here. Not too much, kind of soft. Like that. Now let's see how this looks if we add that bevel and emboss layer style again. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Could remove some of that as well. So that's about it. And we can notice that the shadows here, they're very like, okay, so if we talk about what you should be thinking about when you're painting snow, it's mostly like how the snow is falling and how it's sort of just flowing. So you really want to think about how did the snow fall onto this thing, and how is it falling down, like flowing down. So the other thing is also to think about the color of the snow, and it's going to be very much like the color of the sky. And we can see here that I've picked a pretty blue color. It's going to be this hue right here. We can make it even more blue if we want to see how that looks. And Command B, just go to this layer here. Command B, Control B, and then just go to the shadows, make them a little bit more blue. But yeah, you can just play around with the color, but it's usually very similar to your sky color. I can just fix this up right here on the layer on top of there. Make it a bit more soft. And then the third thing is to think about two different textures you have. The textures. So it's the soft texture, like we see up here. It's very soft, very flowy. And then also you have the whole crunchy and packed together sort of texture, like you see right here. See more here. It's even a little bit there, like when it sort of packs together and it gets more more defined. So you want to keep those three things in mind when painting snow. Alright guys, now that we've painted the study or example, I'm going to make an environment painting with snow up in high altitudes, so we can get a full scene going. Alright, so I have an idea of what I want to do. It's gonna be some snowy, high altitude painting. And I just start the canvas with 2200 by 1200. It's just a random dimension. Doesn't really matter. And just start with a little gradient for the background and beginning to sketch some of the scene. I know I want to have like snowy mountains and something like that to illustrate more how snow is painted in a scene. And I'm just using a full opaque brush here, where it doesn't really matter how hard I press, it's always going to be 100% opaque, unless I change that in the opacity. And I'm just trying to get some composition going right now. I'm always looking at the navigator as usual. And right now I'm just cutting it out, like the foreground, so I have a few different elements, like I have foreground, middle ground, and background. That'll help simplify things and also make it easier later when I want to create more snow and create some separation as well. Sometimes I just paint on one layer, as you've seen me do in my other tutorials and painting videos. But yeah, sometimes it's good to have things on their own layer, because it allows me to do stuff like this, like just completely reshape everything. But that's the cool thing about Photoshop. It really allows you to do all these things with the use of layers, and you can really go all out with just a lot of different ideas and stuff. That's a bit harder to do when you just have one layer. This painting actually ended up being quite different from where I started, because I didn't really know exactly what I wanted. I just know I'm gonna do snow and some mountains. But yeah, here you can see like I have a few different layers, not too many. And just a few to add some separation and being able to manipulate the foreground and background and stuff. I'm trying to find a good composition first before I move forward with any of the textures and stuff like that. And I wanted to have some sort of interest here, like not just snowy mountains, but actually some interesting object or something like that that can catch the eyes, add some story. So I just painted some ship here, like a wreck up in the mountains. I have no idea how it got there, but maybe this is like, 2,000 years from now, and it's been an ice age and something like that. You don't really have to have too many things settled. When you're painting, you can just forget about logic and reason and just paint whatever comes to mind. Just doing some foreground characters here, add some story. And yeah, they're not the focal point of this, or the main focal point of this painting, so I made them quite small. It's interesting. It's good to have something interesting in the painting, and then have something that points towards it. And if you have human figures looking at something, it really makes it draw the audience's eye towards that thing. So there's a few different ways of doing that. And we're gonna come to the snow soon, because right now I'm just trying out, like I said, the whole foundational work to get everything down. And now I created an extra layer here, like I showed before, just above this ship layer here. Just paint entirely with white, or almost white, and add some dark bluish, grayish shadows, because this looks like to be an overcast day, maybe. At least I start with this. You can always change it later, which I will. Like this sky will be very different later. This whole scene. And I'm just continuing adding on more snow. And now I added this mask again. I'm just gonna start removing things to reveal some of the stuff under it and make it look really like some realistic snow texture. And I'm using the brush that I showed you how to make as well. I'm gonna update the Evan brush pack with that brush, so if you guys wanna re-download it, you can do that. I'm just using some of the brushes to create the snow mountain texture. I made a new layer above to create some more separation and also some more atmosphere. Maybe there's like a lot of snow here and it's blowing, and some mists maybe. Really adds to that whole atmosphere to it. I just chose that part of the layer and made it a bit brown, and just to give it some more texture, and starting to render it out a little bit, see how that feels. Adding that emboss layer style to the snow here. It's a quick way of getting some three-dimensionality to the snow immediately. Sometimes I don't do that. Just stick to the flat and then paint over it to make it look 3D. But it's easy, and it helps with it helps sell the whole thing. Just gonna take a sip of my coffee here. Just continuing to texture it a little bit and flipping the screen a lot to notice any differences in composition, any faults and stuff. And this more foreground snow is going to be a little bit more saturated. Just did the same thing, new layer, and added the snow and started doing some shadows and stuff. Now I'm just going to create some texture for the rock under it. Just quick brushes here. I don't really care too much about that. Because that's the thing, like, you don't have to care too much about getting everything 100% from scratch or right. You just want to paint and have fun and get your image across, your idea. And yeah, I'm just painting on the mask here now, or adding more snow with the soft brush, mixing it up a bit. And again with the bevel and emboss. yeah, I'm just working on the background a little bit now. Add some more texture to those mountains there. And I don't need any bevel and emboss there because they're so far away and you don't really want to attract any attention to that. So as usual, I have these layers so I can really push around the different, warp around, free transform the mountains, and just find an appealing and nice looking composition and scene. Because you're trying to lead the eyes into where your audience should look. Like everything is sort of pointing down towards the ship now, and the humans are looking at it, and so on. So just adding some more blue here, some atmospheric perspective. And now I thought about making the sky like a bit more maybe sunsetty, or give it a little bit more drama. Just playing around, I don't really know what I'm doing here in terms of where I want this to end. But just trying it out, seeing how it works. It's easy to go back. And I kind of like it. It looks more peaceful, but I also like the whole like dangerous sort of feel, because this is high altitude and you don't really want that really peaceful thing, I guess. At least I didn't want that right now. But that's pretty cool sometimes when you create these contrasts, like these two soldiers are here and this ship is broken and all that, and then you have this beautiful surroundings. That's really, really interesting contrast there. Just doing the same technique. Sometimes I don't do this technique where I add layers and snow like that, but I think it works really nice for snow. Sometimes I just paint right on it and yeah, see where that goes. But yeah, it's this works really nicely. You can try it out. That's what I really want to get across here. Is to try this technique out. There's 100,000 ways of painting snow, or painting anything really. It's just about different techniques and different processes. And it's good to try things out and not just stick to one thing that has worked for you for years. Sometimes you can find really cool processes and techniques by just trying them out. And I'm always mixing up the crunchy, scattered looking snow with the soft, flowy snow. Those two textures that we were talking about. You don't want the super textured snow everywhere, because that'll really be kind of tiring to the eye. And this fog and stuff, it helps with that too, like dim it down a little bit. Just using some linear dodge here. But as you'll see, like this whole scene will be very different later. Or not very different, but it'll be quite different. It'll become a night scene and so on, but yeah. I'm just playing around here, seeing what works. And I didn't really like the ship too much. It looks a bit weird. So I wanted to make it a little bit more sci-fi, I guess. Just using the polygonal lasso tool, I think it's called. And creating this geometric shape. Lasso is a really good tool to use for a lot of things. And I got the inspiration from that Gene Vault in Svalbard. It looks really cool and kind of mystic. Just adding more lighting and trying out some different designs here. And it's on its own layer, so I can free transform it and warp it and really push the perspective. And I just jump back and forth between different aspects of the painting, because I don't like staying on one place too long, because I get kind of bored and I get a little bit tunnel vision. So I just want to step back out. Like you can see, I don't zoom in at all. Sometimes I do that, like very little. But in this compositional process, I rarely zoom in. I just want to get the whole idea across, and then once I'm really happy with it, I can just go inside and zoom in and really render it out. And what's bothering me here is the whole flow of the scene. I'm not really sure where. It's not really working for me, I think, so I'm kind of at a loss of what to do. But that's what experimentation is for. And now I thought about making these things into crystals instead, because that will fit into the scene a bit more and it'll make it look pretty cool, I think. So from here it just goes to being more and more dark and icy and stuff, less serene. When it comes to painting crystals and stuff, it's I mean, there's no better way than just looking at pictures and trying to figure out like how to paint something. It's hard to explain exactly like how to paint crystals, because it's more about an experimentation thing with the lighting sort of reflecting everywhere, and then you have translucency and a few different color variations, some green and some blue. Just continuing to use the lasso and finding some cool prisma-like crystalline structures. That'll add, like if you look at the navigator right now, it looks pretty cool. Like it looks like something interesting there. So you want to, continue your gaze there. Just duplicating it, adding it a little bit here and there. In the background, blending in it. Looks a bit cool, I think. And as usual, you just want to blend everything in, so the crystal has some... and here I'm using just a lot transparent pixels, so I can't paint outside. And I just add some snow on that. Or you could just do a layer and clip it. That makes it easier to control that layer later, the snow. Because maybe you want it to be less red as it is right now, like the sky, and maybe more blue or something. So it's good to have it on some layer. And here you can really see the soft texture mixed with the crunchy texture. And it really sells the idea that it's actually snow. Just creating a few crystals here and there to not make the big one look kind of out of place. And always thinking about how the snow is falling and how it's sort of adjusting itself to the scene itself, to the environment. And doing this thing where you have like fog from the ground makes something look really big, like clouds are rolling there, and so you can really get an idea of how big this thing actually is. Yeah, now I'm just going on saying that I'm gonna make it a night, sorry, and then create some northern lights here, because I had a cool idea to make it more like StarCraft or something, more sci-fi. So I just make it really dark blue, and I change the color balance on the different snow layers. Sorry. Just doing some gradients here. Like, it's not supposed to be a really, really dark night, but something maybe a bit before midnight, perhaps. And now I wanted to do those northern lights, so just make a new layer, pick some random brush, and blur, motion blur. It's a filter, motion blur. So, sorry you can't see that the menus here. But yeah, so I'm just creating this motion blur, making a little bit of Gaussian blur as well, and playing around a bit with the lighting, adding some more lights. And I have no idea how to paint northern lights. I mean, we have them here in Sweden, so you get kind of like an idea of how to paint them, but it's really all about experimentation here. And now I used warp and just trying out some different things. Some more motion blur, a little bit different color as well, some green and some of that turquoise. Just erasing a little bit. and I wanted it to be really like brighter on the bottom, because that's how Northern Lights look often. They start from the bottom of I think it's ionosphere or something, and then the particles accelerate. Just duplicating it and creating this perspective here, and that's very common of Northern Lights, where they're going up towards north. Duplicating and changing around and just making it look kind of cool. Adding some more Gaussian blur to not make it too sharp, attract too much of the eye. You just want something here. And it looks pretty cool if you look in the navigator right now. So you see how far we've come from from just the beginning, where I had no idea. And right now I'm just adding some stars, using the particles and just creating some stars here and there. Make it look like it's really turning into night. Adding an extra layer of linear dodge with some blur to make them glow a little bit more. And yeah, I was just playing around a bit with the characters, and I had that fog layer from before, and I thought that looked pretty cool. It added some more distance and a little bit of red color variation there as well. Just changing around the crystals a bit, jumping back and forth between the different parts of the painting. Blending things in a bit more, rendering it out. Because now I'm getting like kind of happy with the composition. I mean, this whole painting is kind of not what I expected it to be, but I'm pretty happy with it. I spent about an hour and a half maybe. If I wanted to really make it nice, I could spend maybe, you know, up to 8 hours, 9 hours, even several days. Sometimes I can get like really obsessed and really want to make something look awesome. But it's a pretty cool like concept, you know. You don't have to really stick to one thing and then ask a lot of critique from people or stuff. Just create your paintings and move on to the next one. It'll become much more fun that way as well, and you'll progress so much faster. Just changing the foreground a bit more, adding some more snow, some of that different texture there. Using the soft brush, different sizes there. Just make a new layer above there. Blend it in a bit more with the environment. It looks pretty cool, and also it looks kind of big when you do that. And this could be sand as well. Like snow is pretty similar to sand in many ways. How it sort of flows and stuff. Not how it packs together, kinda. I mean, sand is much more like broken up into particles. Here I'm just adding a layer with some particles and some debris. Looks like snow. And just creating some motion blur and warp it to sort of flow with the scene. So it looks like it's really blowing this icy wind. It really helps sell the dynamism of an image. It adds to it. Just using some different brushes here, creating a little bit more texture where I want it to be. Like, I don't want texture all over this whole scene. I just want some more interest where I want the viewers to look. Just creating different characters because I wasn't too happy with those others. And yeah, I just do this silhouette thing. And then you can go in and start painting over the silhouette. But yeah, I wasn't too happy with these characters either. I actually changed them up before the end of this this walkthrough here. You're gonna see that, but yeah, that's character concept art. Can do some more videos on that. Now it's just about fixing up some random things in the whole scene, some lighting and some more atmospheric stuff, and maybe a bit more color. Fixing up the background a bit, making it look a little bit less sharp. Duplicating the snow layer here. And just blurring it out. It doesn't have to be too much. And then I just merge everything together and create color balance here. So I add some more, or change up the color scheme here. So now it's just one flattened image. And I can just paint over everything. I don't have to worry about any layers because I'm pretty happy with everything. So I just paint normally using some simple texture brush. Just some final touches, some dodge here with highlights and some burn, midtones and shadows. Just to add some more contrast and some more interest. You don't want your image to be too flat in terms of lighting. You want to really guide the eye a bit more. So here's the final image, and you can see I changed those characters to look a little bit cooler. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool image. You can see all the different types of snow here. You see the soft flowing snow, the more crunchy snow, and you also got to see how I paint Northern Lights. Actually, I think this is like the first image ever I paint Northern Lights. And yeah, if you have any suggestions or comments or questions that you'd like to ask, just leave them down below and I'll answer them. You can also join the Facebook group that we have, the Evident Design Facebook group, where you can post your images and get some critique and get some interesting discussions going on for artworks and whatever questions you may have, and just follow along with what we do there.
Alright then guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode and that you could bring something with you from it. Hope that you learned something. I'd like to just conclude with saying 3 things that you should keep in mind when painting snow. The first thing is having in mind those 2 textures, meaning the soft and smooth sort of powdery snow that you see like when it's really cold and the snow has just fallen down and it's really smooth. And the second texture was the more crunchy one. So you'd want to mix these two to make a really realistic looking snow. So the second thing to remember is the color of the snow, and that will often be the color of the sky, which is blue, especially in the shadows, or the sun. And if it's an overcast day, then it will be very gray and dull. The third thing to keep in mind when you're painting snow is the flow of the snow, and that's really important because you really want to paint the snow how it falls down and how it flows in your scene, because then it will really fit in there. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this and I'll see you in the next episode.